Hello and welcome. This audio recording is designed for students sitting the CIE IGCSE History exam. You may find it useful to have a pen and paper to hand, or you might just want to listen through as part of your revision. That's okay too. Today we will be looking at the following question. Why did Saddam Hussein rise to power in Iraq? As usual, we will be using the PEE technique. That is to say, each paragraph will make a point, back it up with evidence in the form of dates, names, statistics, quotations, people, places and events, and then explain the point. Phrases such as "this shows" or "this suggests" are helpful in achieving this, and better answers will often give more than one layer of explanation. We call this PE 2.0 because you're doing it twice. We will offer a 5-part scope. Okay, let's get started. Why did Saddam Hussein rise to power in Iraq? Point 1. His background was important. Evidence to support this includes: Saddam was born impoverished in Al-Auja, a small village 13 kilometers south of Tikrit on the western bank of the river Tigris in northeast Iraq. He couldn't read or write until he was 10 years old, and he used to carry an iron bar around with him as a child. There were some days when he didn't wear shoes, and his stepfather, a caretaker called Hassan al-Ibrahim or Hassan the Liar, was a violent bully who humiliated him and denied him an education. He went to live with his uncle, Khairallah Tulfa. This was a key turning point for the young Saddam, because Khairallah was an Arab nationalist and a Ba'athist who sent him to Kark High School in Baghdad. In 1961, the 24-year-old Saddam graduated from high school in Cairo and began a course in law at the city's university. And so in explaining his background, it's important to note that first of all, he had popular appeal to the masses because of his peasant language and colloquialisms. But secondly, in terms of giving an additional layer of analysis, that he came from a tough, violent background and that this influenced his rise to power. Point 2. Personal connections. Evidence to support this point includes: President Abdul Salam Arif became tired of the extreme Ba'athists because of their infighting, and he kicked them out. This was good for a man called al-Bakr, who was a moderate. Al-Bakr became the new Prime Minister. And Ahmad Hassan al-Bakr was from Tikrit and a cousin of Khairallah Tulfa. Saddam therefore had connections at the very top, and in February 1964 became a member of the Regional Command Council, or RCC, because of his loyalty to Hassan al-Bakr. This is a theme we are to see during Saddam's rule, and some people describe it as nepotism. But certainly in explaining his rise to power, his personal connections and his Tikriti background is crucial. Point 3. Ideology. Evidence to support this includes: the Ba'ath Party was an Arab nationalist party strongly against the existence of Israel as a state. The party's motto was, quote, "Unity, liberation, socialism," unquote. and it had been set up in Syria, but was an Arab organisation to remove colonial influence in the Gulf. Saddam joined the party in 1957, where he organised thugs to beat up political opponents on the streets of Baghdad, and soon made himself a very important part of the party. Many of Saddam's latest speeches appeal to this sense of Arab nationalism, and so in explaining this point, his ideology or political beliefs are crucial in explaining his rise to power. Point 4. Saddam's political manoeuvring. Evidence to support this crucial point include: Saddam was a very calculating and intelligent politician. In July 1966, he had escaped from jail. And in July 1968, he managed to get senior army officials on side in a bloodless revolution, whereby President Arif fled to London and Bakr, who we know has family and Tikriti connections with him, became president. And now that he was in charge of it, Saddam appointed friends to the RCC to strengthen his position. Some people would describe this as cronyism, but it was definitely a political skill. Saddam, in his position of power, was able to uncover or invent conspiracies thanks to his role in the security apparatus. And for 11 years, Saddam acted as Bakr's deputy, hiding his presidential aims and keeping a dignified profile. Moreover, he encouraged oil nationalization, and this created wealth for ordinary Iraqis and great popularity for himself. He also ensured that the USSR, a superpower, was an ally of Iraq, and so this shows him to be a very astute politician. And so it's crucial in explaining his rise to power that we understand that Saddam had fantastic political skill and was able to outmaneuver many of his opponents. Finally, point 5. Saddam's willingness to engage with the violent nature of Iraqi politics. We've already mentioned that Saddam came from a violent background. Evidence to support this point, that he was willing to engage in the violent nature of Iraqi politics, includes: in October 1958, Saddam carried out an assassination of an opponent in Tikrit who had informed on him. And 1 year later, in October 1959, he attempted but failed to kill Iraq's ruler, General Abdul Karim Qasem. Saddam was injured but gained limelight and publicity. And again in 1964, he attempted a failed coup against President Arif and was jailed for 2 years. But when in 1963 Qasem was overthrown and killed, Saddam had left Cairo and was given a minor position in the Central Farmers Office. He was later put in charge of the country's security affairs, and he knew that armed force was the key to power in Iraq. After the revolution, he became the deputy chairman of the Revolutionary Command Council, and thus the second most important man in Iraq. And our final piece of evidence to support this point includes: having played wingman for so long, when Bakr's health deteriorated, Saddam encouraged him to step down, almost certainly with violent threats. So, why did Saddam Hussein come to power in Iraq? We have given a 5-part scope, namely his background, his personal links, his ideology, Saddam's political skill, and Saddam Hussein's willingness to engage in the violent nature of Iraqi politics. Okay, now it's time for a clever conclusion. Clearly, all of these factors had an impact in explaining Saddam's rise to power in Iraq, but it is argued here that his political skill and his cunning, particularly when working with Bakr and keeping him on side for 11 years, was crucial, and that this built on the other factors in explaining his rise to power. Saddam was 42 years old when he assumed complete power in Iraq. Okay, thank you very much for listening. I hope you found this useful. If you did, feel free to follow me on Twitter at Mr. Guiney History, or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel for further pieces of advice. Bye bye.